I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. My life had always been a carefully painted canvas, each stroke representing a choice, a moment, a relationship. I was an artist, after all, and my life was my masterpiece. But as I stood in the dim light of the studio, surrounded by splashes of color and the scent of turpentine, I felt the first cracks forming in my carefully constructed world. It all began with a joint project. I had been working on a series of large canvases that explored the theme of connection, how people intertwine, how their lives intersect and diverge. It was a personal exploration, one that I had poured my heart into. But when my colleague, Mia, was assigned to collaborate with me, I had no idea how much she would change everything. Mia was a whirlwind of creativity and passion. Her energy was infectious, and I found myself drawn to her in ways I hadn't anticipated. We spent long hours in the studio, our conversations flowing as freely as the paint on our canvases. She had a way of seeing the world that was both refreshing and challenging, pushing me to explore depths of emotion I had long buried. I admired her talent, her dedication, and the way she could make even the simplest moments feel profound. As the project progressed, so did my feelings for her. I tried to suppress them, reminding myself of my life partner, Sarah, who had been my rock for years. We had built a life together, filled with love and shared dreams. But the more time I spent with Mia, the more I felt the pull of temptation. It was as if I were standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into the abyss of desire and uncertainty. One evening, as we worked late into the night, the atmosphere shifted. The air crackled with unspoken words, and I could feel the tension between us. Mia looked up from her canvas, her eyes searching mine, and in that moment, I knew we were both teetering on the edge of something dangerous. I wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but the weight of my commitment to Sarah held me back. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, I found myself increasingly unable to resist. We shared laughter, secrets, and dreams, and with each passing moment, my heart ached with the knowledge that I was betraying the very foundation of my life. I felt a mix of exhilaration and guilt, a cocktail of emotions that left me dizzy. I was falling for Mia, and it terrified me. The conflict within me grew, a storm of anger and sadness. I felt ashamed for even considering the possibility of leaving Sarah for someone else. But the connection I had with Mia was undeniable, and it gnawed at me, whispering sweet nothings that drowned out the voice of reason. I was caught in a web of mixed feelings, torn between loyalty and desire, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. As the project neared completion, I knew I had to make a choice. I could either confront my feelings and risk everything I had built with Sarah, or I could bury my emotions and walk away from the connection I had with Mia. But the thought of losing her felt like a death sentence to my spirit. I was trapped in a cycle of despair, unable to see a way out. The climax of my internal struggle came one fateful night. We were alone in the studio, the moonlight spilling through the windows, casting a soft glow on our canvases. I could feel the weight of the world pressing down on me, and in that moment, I made a choice. I leaned in, our lips brushing together, igniting a fire that had been smoldering beneath the surface. It was intoxicating, and for a brief moment, I forgot about everything else. But as the kiss deepened, reality crashed back in. I pulled away, my heart racing, panic flooding my veins. I had crossed a line, and I knew it. The betrayal I had feared was now a tangible reality, and the pain of it settled heavily in my chest. I had to face the consequences of my actions, and I was terrified of what that would mean for my life with Sarah. As I left the studio that night, I felt a profound sense of loss. I had tasted the sweetness of love, but it had come at a cost I was not prepared to pay. The uncertainty loomed over me like a dark cloud, and I knew that the path ahead would be fraught with pain and anger. I had opened a door I could never close, and the weight of my choices would haunt me as I navigated the tumultuous waters of my heart. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and guilt. I found myself oscillating between moments of euphoria and waves of despair. The kiss with Mia had ignited something within me, a flame that I couldn't extinguish, but it also left me feeling like a ghost in my own life. I returned to the studio, but the vibrant colors that once inspired me now felt muted, overshadowed by the weight of my betrayal. Mia seemed to sense the shift in my demeanor. She was still the same radiant force of creativity, but there was a new tension between us, a fragile thread that threatened to snap at any moment. I could see the questions in her eyes, the uncertainty that mirrored my own. We continued to work on our project, but the joy we once shared was now laced with an undercurrent of anxiety. Every brushstroke felt heavy, every laugh tinged with the knowledge of what had transpired. I tried to reach out to Sarah, to reconnect with the woman I had loved for so long, but the words felt stuck in my throat. How could I explain the turmoil within me? How could I tell her that my heart was divided, that I was falling for someone else? The thought of hurting her was unbearable, yet the thought of continuing to hide my feelings felt like a betrayal in itself. I was trapped in a cycle of shame and uncertainty, and I didn't know how to break free. One evening, as I sat in our living room, the familiar warmth of home felt foreign. Sarah was curled up on the couch, engrossed in a book, her presence a comforting balm against the chaos in my mind. I watched her, the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the way her lips curled into a smile at something she read. I loved her, I truly did, but the guilt gnawed at me like a relentless tide, pulling me under. "Hey," she said, glancing up from her book. "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" Her voice was soft, filled with concern, and it pierced through the fog of my thoughts. I wanted to tell her everything, to lay bare the turmoil that raged within me, but the words felt like stones in my mouth. Instead, I forced a smile, hoping to mask the storm brewing inside. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind with the project." She nodded, but I could see the flicker of disappointment in her eyes. I had always been open with her, and my sudden withdrawal must have felt like a betrayal in its own right. I felt a pang of sadness at the thought of her feeling abandoned, and it only deepened my internal conflict. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself increasingly drawn to Mia. We spent late nights in the studio, our conversations growing more intimate, our laughter more frequent. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, but with that aliveness came a crushing weight of guilt. I was betraying Sarah, the woman who had stood by me through thick and thin, and the realization left me feeling hollow. One afternoon, as Mia and I worked on the final touches of our project, she turned to me, her expression serious. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded, my heart racing. "Do you ever think about what happens after this project is over?" Her question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I swallowed hard, my mind racing. I had thought about it, of course, but I had pushed those thoughts aside, afraid of what they might reveal. "I guess I haven't really thought about it," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Mia studied me, her eyes searching mine. "I don't want to overstep, but I feel like there's something between us. Something real." Her words sent a jolt through me, a mix of exhilaration and dread. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that I felt it too, but the weight of my commitment to Sarah loomed large. "Mia, Before I could finish, she stepped closer, her gaze intense. "I know you're with someone, and I respect that. But I can't help how I feel." The air crackled with tension, and I felt the walls closing in around me. I was standing at a crossroads, and every direction felt fraught with danger. I wanted to lean in, to close the distance between us, but the thought of Sarah's face, the hurt in her eyes, held me back. "I need time to think," I finally said, my voice trembling. Mia nodded, her expression a mix of understanding and disappointment. "I get it. Just know that I'm here, and I care about you." As I left the studio that night, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I was caught in a web of emotions, betrayal, pain, anger, and sadness. Each feeling intertwined with the others, creating a tapestry of confusion that I couldn't unravel. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring past me like the thoughts racing through my mind. I felt like a stranger in my own life, a man divided between two worlds, each pulling me in opposite directions. When I walked through the door, the familiar scent of home enveloped me, but it felt suffocating. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared dinner. The sight of her, so content and unaware of the storm brewing within me, made my heart ache. I wanted to reach out, to hold her close and tell her everything, but the words felt like a betrayal. Instead, I forced a smile and joined her at the counter. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with warmth. "Busy," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "Just wrapping up the project. Can't wait to see it. I know you've been working so hard." She beamed at me, and I felt a pang of guilt wash over me. How could I tell her that my heart was no longer fully hers? As we sat down to dinner, I found myself lost in thought, my mind drifting to Mia and the connection we shared. I could feel Sarah's gaze on me, her concern palpable. "You seem distant," she said, her voice laced with worry. "Is everything really okay?" I hesitated, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. "Just tired, I guess," I finally said, hoping to deflect her concern. But Sarah wasn't convinced. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I'm here for you." Her words were a lifeline, but I felt unworthy of her trust. I had built a life with her, a beautiful existence filled with love and laughter, and yet here I was, contemplating a future with someone else. The shame of it all was suffocating, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. That night, as I lay in bed beside Sarah, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. I could hear her soft breathing, the rhythm of her heart, and it filled me with a sense of longing. I wanted to reach out, to pull her close and forget about everything else, but the image of Mia lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the choices I had made. I tossed and turned, unable to find solace in sleep. The conflict within me raged on, a tempest of emotions that left me feeling raw and exposed. I thought about the kiss, the way it had ignited something deep within me, and I felt a mix of desire and despair. I was betraying Sarah, and yet I couldn't deny the connection I had with Mia. It was a paradox that left me feeling trapped. The next day, I returned to the studio, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Mia was already there, her presence filling the space with an energy that both thrilled and terrified me. As we worked side by side, I could feel the tension between us, a palpable force that crackled in the air. I wanted to talk to her, to lay bare my feelings, but the fear of what that would mean held me back. "Are you okay?" Mia asked, her voice soft and concerned. I nodded, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. "Just trying to wrap my head around everything," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. She stepped closer, her gaze searching mine. "You don't have to pretend with me. I can see that you're struggling." Her words cut through the facade I had built, and I felt a wave of vulnerability wash over me. "It's complicated," I said, my voice trembling. "I care about you, but I'm with someone else. I don't want to hurt her." Mia's expression softened, and I could see the understanding in her eyes. "I get it. I don't want to come between you two. But I can't help how I feel." The honesty in her words struck me, and I felt a mix of admiration and fear. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that I felt the same way, but the weight of my commitment to Sarah loomed large. I was caught in a web of emotions, and I didn't know how to escape. As the days passed, the project drew to a close, and the tension between Mia and me reached a breaking point. We were standing in front of our completed canvases, the culmination of our work, but all I could think about was the unspoken words hanging between us. "Mia," I began, my heart racing. "We need to talk." She turned to me, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "About what?" "About us. About what happens next." The words felt heavy on my tongue, laden with the weight of everything I had been avoiding. I could see the flicker of anticipation in her eyes, but I also sensed the trepidation that accompanied it. "I've been thinking about it too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to complicate your life, but I can't ignore what's happening between us." The honesty in her words sent a shiver down my spine. I felt a rush of emotions, excitement, fear, and a deep sense of longing. But the thought of Sarah loomed large in my mind, a shadow that darkened the brightness of my feelings for Mia. "I care about you, Mia," I said, my voice trembling. "But I'm with someone else. I can't just walk away from that." Her expression shifted, a mixture of disappointment and understanding washing over her face. "I know. I don't want to be the reason you hurt someone you love. But I can't pretend that I don't feel this connection." The air between us crackled with tension, and I felt the walls closing in. I was standing at a precipice, and every instinct in me screamed to take a step back. But the pull of my feelings for Mia was undeniable, a magnetic force that drew me closer. "I need time to figure this out," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Mia nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and sadness. "I understand. Just know that I'm here, and I'm willing to wait. As I left the studio that night, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. I was caught in a web of emotions, torn between two worlds, and I didn't know how to escape. The thought of losing Mia felt like a death sentence to my spirit, but the thought of betraying Sarah was equally unbearable. The next few days were a blur of confusion and heartache. I tried to focus on my work, but every brushstroke felt heavy with the weight of my choices. I spent sleepless nights tossing and turning, my mind racing with thoughts of Mia and Sarah. I felt like I was living a double life, and the guilt was suffocating. One evening, as I sat in our living room, Sarah walked in with a concerned expression. "You've been so distant lately. Is there something you want to talk about?" Her words pierced through the fog of my thoughts, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. I wanted to tell her everything, to lay bare the turmoil within me, but the fear of hurting her held me back. "I'm just stressed with work," I said, forcing a smile. But Sarah wasn't convinced. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I'm here for you." Her words were a lifeline, but I felt unworthy of her trust. I had built a life with her, a beautiful existence filled with love and laughter, and yet here I was, contemplating a future with someone else. The shame of it all was suffocating, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself increasingly drawn to Mia. We spent late nights in the studio, our conversations growing more intimate, our laughter more frequent. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years, but with that aliveness came a crushing weight of guilt. I was betraying Sarah, and yet I couldn't deny the connection I had with Mia. It was a paradox that left me feeling trapped. The climax of my internal struggle came one fateful night. I was in the studio, staring at the canvases we had created together, each one a testament to our collaboration and the bond we had formed. I could feel Mia's presence behind me, a comforting warmth that both thrilled and terrified me. "Mia," I said, my voice trembling. "I can't keep doing this. I need to make a choice." She turned to me, her expression a mix of hope and fear. "What do you mean?" "I need to decide what I want. I can't keep living in this limbo." Her eyes searched mine, and I could see the vulnerability in her gaze. "I don't want to pressure you, but I can't pretend that I don't care about you." The weight of her words hung in the air, and I felt the walls closing in around me. I was standing at a crossroads, and every direction felt fraught with danger. I wanted to lean in, to tell her that I felt the same way, but the thought of Sarah's face, the hurt in her eyes, held me back. "I need time to think," I finally said, my voice trembling. Mia nodded, her expression a mix of understanding and disappointment. "I get it. Just know that I'm here, and I care about you." As I left the studio that night, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I was caught in a web of emotions, betrayal, pain, anger, sadness, and uncertainty. Each feeling intertwined with the others, creating a tapestry of confusion that I couldn't unravel. I drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring past me like the thoughts racing through my mind. I felt like a stranger in my own life, a man divided between two worlds, each pulling me in opposite directions. The following days were a blur of confusion and guilt. I returned home to Sarah, who was blissfully unaware of the turmoil within me. I tried to engage in our usual routines, but every moment felt like a performance, a facade that I was desperately trying to maintain. I could see the concern in her eyes, the way she would glance at me, searching for the man she knew. But I was slipping away, lost in a labyrinth of my own making. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, I felt the weight of my secret pressing down on me. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder, and I could feel the warmth of her love enveloping me. It was a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in my heart. I wanted to tell her everything, to lay bare the turmoil that raged within me, but the words felt stuck in my throat. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft and filled with concern. I hesitated, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. "Yeah, just a lot on my mind," I replied, forcing a smile. But Sarah wasn't convinced. "You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I'm here for you." Her words were a lifeline, but I felt unworthy of her trust. I had built a life with her, a beautiful existence filled with love and laughter, and yet here I was, contemplating a future with someone else. The shame of it all was suffocating, and I could feel the walls closing in around me. The following week, I finally made the decision to confront my feelings. I called Mia and asked her to meet me at the studio. My heart raced as I drove there, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling within me. I knew I had to be honest, not just with her, but with myself. When I arrived, Mia was already there, her eyes lighting up as she saw me. But I could also see the uncertainty in her gaze. "Hey," she said, her voice soft. "What's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I began, my voice trembling. "About us, about everything." Mia nodded, her expression serious. "I'm listening. I care about you, Mia. I really do. But I'm also with someone who loves me, who has been there for me through everything. I can't just walk away from that." Her expression shifted, a mixture of disappointment and understanding washing over her face. "I get it. I don't want to be the reason you hurt someone you love. But I can't ignore what's happening between us." The air between us crackled with tension, and I felt the walls closing in. I was standing at a precipice, and every instinct in me screamed to take a step back. But the pull of my feelings for Mia was undeniable, a magnetic force that drew me closer. "I need to be honest with Sarah," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't keep living this lie." Mia's eyes softened, and I could see the understanding in her gaze. "I respect that. Just know that I'm here, and I'm willing to wait." As I left the studio that night, I felt a sense of despair wash over me. I was caught in a web of emotions, torn between two worlds, and I didn't know how to escape. The thought of losing Mia felt like a death sentence to my spirit, but the thought of betraying Sarah was equally unbearable. The next day, I sat Sarah down in our living room, my heart racing. I could see the concern in her eyes, the way she sensed that something was off. "Sarah, we need to talk," I said, my voice trembling. She looked at me, her expression a mix of worry and confusion. "What's wrong?" "I've been struggling with something for a while now," I began, my heart pounding in my chest. "And I need to be honest with you." As I laid bare my feelings, the weight of my secret lifted, but the pain in Sarah's eyes cut deeper than I could have imagined. I watched as her expression shifted from confusion to heartbreak.